What are you doing here, Christina? I was shocked to see my 8-year-old grandchild rummaging through trash in the park, wearing tattered clothes. Yet, when I approached, the child ran away, insisting. "You're mistaken." I thought. There's no way I could have mistaken someone else for her. Curious and concerned, I called my son only to be met with his frustration. "I'm busy with the kids' field day today." Suddenly, my son started yelling in anger. From behind him, I could hear the sounds of children cheering and announcements echoing throughout the venue. I thought. Then who was that child earlier? I couldn't shake the image from my mind, and soon, an unbelievable truth behind this incident would come to light. I am Sandra Powell, 58 years old. I lost my husband, who was a company executive, to illness a few years ago. Thanks to the inheritance he left me, I have been able to live a comfortable life as a stay-at-home wife. My son Phil, his wife Megan, and their 8-year-old child, Christina, live about a 10-minute drive from my home. "Grandma, your egg rolls are my favorite. Can I come to eat them every day?" "I'm happy to hear that, but you have school, don't you?" "Then, I'll live with Grandma. That way, you can make them for me every day." I adore my grandchild, who always knows how to brighten my day. My son works for a major company, thanks to my husband's connections. I thought they were living comfortably, thanks to his salary. However, his spending habits were reckless, often leading to arguments with his wife. One day, Megan called me, distressed. "Phil just gets angry when I tell him to stop wasting money, saying it's his right to spend his earnings as he pleases." After hearing about how distressed my daughter-in-law, Megan, was, I decided to visit their house to set my son, Phil, straight. When I pressed the doorbell, Megan welcomed me and led me into the living room. There, Phil was lounging on the sofa, fiddling with his smartphone. Glancing up at me, he sighed deeply and asked, "Need something? Do you even realize that you're the breadwinner of this family? Stop nagging. I know what I'm doing." Our argument escalated, worsening our relationship. Since then, Phil has avoided coming home. I thought. What a troublesome situation. Still, when it came time to give a birthday present to my grandchild, Phil would visit. Despite trying to hold back, I couldn't help but scold him, which only made him turn away in annoyance. "Your constant lecturing is annoying. Just send cash gifts for Christina from now on." His response caught me off guard. "But then I won't be able to see Christina and you guys. That's your punishment for angering me. I won't bring Christina over anymore. Spend your life alone." I was shocked and hurt by his words. Disappointed, I watched as he left with my grandchild, who kept looking back at me with concern. The pain lingered, leaving me depressed and withdrawn for a while. I thought. With time, perhaps Phil's feelings will change. I tried to calm myself, believing things would eventually get better. Feeling hesitant to venture outside, I remained cooped up at home. However, realizing this couldn't continue, I decided to resume my daily walks. It was about 3 months later when I decided to extend my usual walking route a bit further. I thought, I can still walk just fine. However, suddenly feeling tired, I decided to take a break and headed to a nearby park. There, I saw a young girl in dirty clothes, diving headfirst into a trash can, rummaging through it. I approached quietly and upon seeing her face, I gasped in shock. "Christina? Is that you, Christina?" "No, it's not me." The girl looked at me for a moment with a shocked expression before running away. I thought. A mistake? No, that can't be. She looked just like Christina. Worried about the girl I saw, I called my son. "What do you want?" "I'm busy with the kids' field day today." "That can't be." "Because..." Before I could finish, Phil complained without waiting for my reply. Suddenly, I heard children cheering and an announcement from the background of the call. "The next event is the ball toss. Is everyone ready? Echoed a voice. Phil was indeed at the field day. Did you hear that announcement? Yes, I know you're at the field day. But it's strange. I saw a girl who looks just like Christina rummaging through trash at the park. I was certain it was my beloved granddaughter. Phil paused for a moment as if at a loss for words. What? That's ridiculous. You must have mistaken her for someone else. Don't call me over such nonsense. Then, reverting to his usual tone, Phil hung up abruptly. I thought, could it really have been a case of mistaken identity? I couldn't shake off a strange feeling, unable to get the image out of my head. With a heavy heart, I resumed walking. Without realizing, my feet led me to my granddaughter's school. The usually bustling grounds were eerily silent. I thought, what's going on here? Frozen by the unexpected quiet, a poster caught my eye. The date revealed that the field day had ended the previous week, uncovering Phil's lie. I thought. So, the girl I saw at the park was Christina after all. Questions about Phil's whereabouts swirled in my mind. Deciding it was better to seek answers directly, I headed to my son's house and rang the doorbell. After a short wait, the door opened to reveal the girl from the park, standing in tattered clothes. Grandma, why did you come? Upon seeing me, she shrank back, on the verge of tears. I hugged her tightly. So it was you at the park, Christina. But what's with those clothes? Where are your mom and dad? Despite my repeated questions, she only replied, it's nothing. I'm fine. I'll come in anyway. As I took off my shoes, Christina tried to stop me, but I forcefully entered the house. The hallway was covered in dust, and upon opening the living room door, I was met with scattered trash and the smell of rotting food. The room was in such disarray that I was at a loss for words. What on earth is going on here? I was about to clean up. Please go back home, Grandma. My granddaughter refused to answer any questions. Checking the expiration dates on snack wrappers on the floor, they were all from a week ago. The refrigerator was empty. I thought, could Christina have been alone all this time? As I was contemplating, my granddaughter's stomach growled loudly. I couldn't leave Christina in that house, so after persuading her, I took her back to my place, gave her a bath, and fed her. Initially nervous, Christina began to relax as she ate more and more, bite by bite. You've always loved Grandma's egg rolls, haven't you, Christina? Are they good? Tears rolled down her cheeks as she stuffed her favorite food into her mouth and nodded repeatedly at my words. It was as if all the emotions she had been holding back were finally pouring out. After her stomach was full and she had calmed down, Christina began to reveal the unbelievable truth behind her being at the park's trash can. Mom has been in the hospital for surgery and hasn't been at home for a long time. I had not heard anything about this from either my son or daughter-in-law. We hadn't been in contact since the disagreement over Christina's birthday present. What about your dad? Right after Mom went to the hospital, Dad said he found a new family and left. He hasn't come back. Shocked by her words, I exclaimed. What? I couldn't help but worry about what Phil was up to. The more I thought about it, the more I felt sorry for Christina. Why didn't you contact Grandma when you were in trouble? You could always rely on me. Christina's expression darkened as she had been peaceful until now. Dad said if I told anyone, he would never let me see Mom again. So, I endured it. Eventually, when the food ran out and she couldn't bear the hunger any longer, Christina resorted to rummaging through park trash cans for days. However, she was still attending elementary school, so she must have been eating at least the school lunches. Have you been going to school in those tattered clothes all this time? Dad called the school and said I didn't want to go. So for a while, he told the teacher I would be staying with distant relatives. After hearing more, it was clear Christina wanted to see her school friends and attend school, but even that was denied to her. Phil had made sure Christina couldn't talk about what was happening by isolating her from everyone. To verify Christina's shocking revelations, I called Megan's mobile phone. "Really, Mother? Is that true?" I was shocked too. Megan had been hospitalized for gynecological surgery and thought Phil was properly taking care of Christina. However, she found it strange that recently, Phil had been making excuses for not letting her talk to Christina over the phone. "I'm sorry for causing you trouble. How is Christina?" "She's eating well now and has become lively again, so don't worry." I promised Megan that I would take full responsibility for Christina and ended the call. Then, I immediately contacted Phil. When confronted, Phil nonchalantly justified his actions. "Christina is fine, so there's no need to raise your voice. The other day, when you called, I was at her son's field day. Do you even realize what you're doing? She's just my affair for now, but I plan to settle down with her eventually. Plus, I've always wanted a boy, so it works out." Phil nonchalantly shared that he was living with his mistress and her child, leaving his own daughter behind. My anger boiled over, and I wished I could slap some sense into him there and then. Christina had better not have spilled the beans, after I warned her. "How dare you talk like that? Leaving Christina like this, not letting her go to school, that's not what a parent does." Phil brushed off my lecturing, showing no signs of remorse, and began to spout his selfish reasoning. "I've got the school covered, and since Megan is in the hospital, all communication from the school goes directly to me. As long as it doesn't get out, we're good." Man, I'm so smart. Hearing my son laugh about something that could potentially lead to a police matter made my skin crawl with horror. "You've been spouting nonsense since we started talking, but what are you planning to do about Megan? She can't have kids anymore, so she's out. I've decided to start a new family with my girlfriend." It broke my heart to think of Megan suffering in the hospital while Phil, my son, refused to listen to reason. Eventually, he even asked me to tell Megan to move out of his house as soon as possible. Frustrated and appalled by Phil's selfishness, I ended the conversation, feeling a mix of anger and disappointment. Later, I took Christina to visit Megan in the hospital. Megan embraced Christina tightly, shedding tears as she apologized for the hardship she had caused. "As long as Mom is okay, I'm fine. I hope you get better soon. I'll work hard so we can live together again. Please take care of Christina until then, Mother." While patting Megan's shoulder gently, I assured her with a smile. "Leave it to me." I asked Christina to buy a drink when she mentioned being thirsty. Then, I apologized for my son's selfish actions and disclosed everything to Megan without holding back. "That's awful. I'm the one who's hurt the most by not being able to have children anymore. How could he cheat on me at a time like this?" I too felt Megan's pain deeply as a woman, and tears welled up in my eyes. After learning the truth, Megan decided to divorce Phil. "For Christina's sake, I believe it's best if you and Phil separate and you raise Christina. But first, I want to make sure he gets what he deserves. It's my fault for being so helpless." However, I reassured her that Phil was to blame, not her. Just then, Christina returned with the drinks, looking delighted to spend time with Megan after so long. I was determined to protect the happiness of these two. On the way back from the hospital with Christina, I devised a plan to corner Phil. A month later, I called Phil. "Megan has agreed to divorce you. She's moved her things out, so you can come by the house you used to live in whenever it's convenient." "Really? Nice one, Mom. Thanks, just give me a sec." After making some calls, Phil said he would come by in 2 weeks. Megan, still hospitalized, had decided to go through with the divorce, with me facilitating the process. On the day Phil said he would arrive, a moving truck loaded with items pulled up in front of the house. From the second-floor window, I saw Phil and his mistress approaching the house with smiles on their faces. I had instructed Christina not to come downstairs no matter what. As I waited inside, I heard Phil trying to unlock the door. Huh? Something's wrong. The key won't turn. What's going on? With a heavy sigh, I opened the door from the inside, glaring at Phil. Mom? What are you doing here? I told you I'd be waiting here at the house you used to live in. Phil, taken aback, stumbled backward in surprise. What did you bring in the moving truck? My new wife's stuff. What are you talking about? This isn't your house anymore. I've changed the locks, you know. What? Don't go doing things on your own. This is my house. After all, didn't you call me over here? Standing next to Phil, his mistress, her face a picture of confusion, nudged him and asked. What's going on? I moved closer to Phil, who looked ready to explode with anger. First of all, this house was in your father's name, remember? Yeah. So, it'll eventually be mine. As if inheriting the house was his divine right. You're sorely mistaken. After your father passed, I inherited this house. Clearly, he had been blissfully unaware of this fact. I had once thought that, one day when I joined my husband, I would leave the house to Phil, especially if he, Megan, and Christina were living happily together. However, Phil had abandoned Megan during her surgery and disregarded his own daughter. I delivered another reality check. By the way, I've changed the ownership of this house to Megan. Phil scoffed at the idea, staring me down, but I was unfazed by his intimidation. I had carefully planned this to ensure Megan and Christina wouldn't struggle after I was gone. Now that the divorce is finalized, trespassing is a crime. As I reached for my phone to call the police, Phil hesitated but then tried to stop me. If you don't want to be reported, disappear with that moving truck, now. This is ridiculous. I've already given up my apartment, and all my stuff is here. Oh, that reminds me. I've stored your belongings in a storage unit. Here's the key and the bill. Despite his furious ranting, I pretended not to hear and began to close the door, saying, Goodbye. Phil desperately tried to prevent the door from closing. I get it, you're really angry. Just let me stay at the family home for a little while. I firmly shook my head, giving him a cold look. You must want an heir, right? With her son around, you'd have a secure future. He tried to convince me, revealing his mistress was a single mother to a 6-year-old boy. They had become intimately involved around the time Megan's illness was diagnosed, 2 months ago. Despite my previous assumption that Phil had been cheating for a long time, it turned out the boy wasn't Phil's son after all. The affair had started merely 2 months prior, and Phil had forsaken his family for a woman he'd just met. When asked if the mistress knew Phil had a family, she nodded, which only deepened my dismay. Blood relation or not, a grandchild is a grandchild to me. Regardless of what you say, Christina is my only grandchild. Realizing my resolve was unshakable, he clicked his tongue and glared at me threateningly. It was hard to believe this was my own child. Once again, I met my son's gaze firmly. As of today, our parent-child ties are severed. I can't acknowledge someone as my son who'd so selfishly abandon his sick wife and child. Hearing my words, Phil twisted his mouth into a smirk and looked at me as if mocking me. Fine by me. It's a relief not to have to deal with a nagging old woman anymore. Appalled at how rotten to the core he was, I found myself speechless but determined to confront him further. I've heard your reputation at work is atrocious. You've been shielded by the company president out of respect for your father until now. But after hearing about this, he's considering your future with the company. There had been issues with Phil's attendance at work, like frequent lateness and leaving early, so it seemed likely he would be fired. No way, that can't be true. I'm going to lose my job and salary at a major company. What am I supposed to do now? How am I supposed to live? He had never imagined such a downfall for himself and only now realized the gravity of his situation. Mom, I'm sorry for everything I've done until now. I'll change my attitude. Please don't abandon me. Don't you feel sorry for your grandson if he ends up living in hardship because I can't provide? His words only fueled my anger further. How can you say such things when you've left Christina alone and struggling for food? Enough with your nonsense. Realizing my anger had peaked, Phil fell silent, but I showed no mercy. You won't receive a penny of the inheritance. Moreover, you'll have to pay Megan a compensation of $30,000 for the affair and $70,000 for Christina's child support in one lump sum. That can't be. I'll be left with nothing. What am I supposed to do now? As he trembled and turned pale, I had no sympathy left for Phil. I then turned to his mistress, who had been silently listening all along. Since you were involved with Phil knowing he was married, you'll also be sued for $10,000 in damages. The mistress protested, attacking Phil. That's not what you promised. You said you had a house and would spoil me with luxury. However, Phil just collapsed on the spot, completely dazed. This is no place to sit down. The movers are waiting, aren't they? Phil screamed in despair. It's too early to scream. Leaving Christina alone at home is a crime, so be prepared. I handed him the flyer for the storage unit where his belongings were kept and firmly closed the door. Watching from the second-floor window as their truck drove away, I whispered a final goodbye in my heart. After everything was settled, I petted Christina, who had been quietly upstairs, and called Megan. I've given him what he deserved. Now, it's just up to you to get better. Luckily, her doctor had just given her permission to be discharged. Now, Christina could freely enjoy Megan's company. Later, Phil ended up spending time in a gloomy place due to the crimes he committed by abandoning his family. Despite venturing out, Phil found himself penniless after making a lump sum payment of a considerable amount of money, leading to dire financial straits. His girlfriend, who had been with him for his wealth, grew tired of him when not only was there no money left, but she also found herself being sued for damages, and thus she left him. Phil lost his job and seemed to be living a lonely life, but soon after, he cut off communication with everyone and his whereabouts became unknown. There were rumors that someone had seen him rummaging through trash in a park somewhere. While it would be a lie to say I'm not worried at all, this is a situation he brought upon himself, so there's not much that can be done. Megan was able to leave the hospital soon and now lives happily with Christina in the house. Seeing Christina able to go to school every day and live a normal life brings me great relief. Now, I get to spend joyful days interacting with my grandchildren again. Grandma's egg rolls are so delicious, I want to eat them every day. Her smile is the best nourishment I could ask for.